Did you have a chance to watch some of the address or maybe some of the highlights? He referenced you at one point.
I saw the news reports. I'm a big fan of Thomas Massie. I will be campaigning and traveling around the state with Thomas Massie around his district again in the near future. I think Thomas Massie is the most fiscally conservative and the best defender of the Constitution. And I think that's what's most important. Interestingly, the things that he's had a little controversy with the president over were things that the president actually supported. The president talked in his campaign about revealing the Epstein files. For some reason, it became less important after he was president. But Thomas pursued this, and miracle of miracles was able to pass a bill, and the president signed it. So I really don't see them as on opposite sides. I think you can both like the president and like Thomas Massie. And in fact, I think a lot of Thomas Massie's supporters are still supporters of the president.
I mean, he spent several minutes just on Congressman Massey, and that's not entirely a surprise given their kind of back and forth in the past. But I mean, he called him a total disaster for the state and for the Republican Party. I mean, this really seems to have his number one priority, at least top five, going into this primary.
Well, I think one of the interesting things that's been discovered in the last couple of days is that Massey's opponent actually left the Republican Party when Donald Trump became the nominee in 2016. So he actually was one of these never Trumpers, hated Donald Trump, left the party, and then only came back when Biden became president in 2020. So it's kind of a curious pick. Thomas Massie defended the president against impeachment. So did I. The second impeachment, I actually take a lot of credit for derailing that by pointing out that it was unconstitutional and forcing a vote on that. So really, both Thomas and I have been big defenders of President Trump. Even if he doesn't appreciate it anymore, we were some of the key defenders on impeachment. And meanwhile, Massey's opponent that the president now likes was somebody who left the party because he didn't want to be associated with Donald Trump. So it's kind of a weird world where people like myself and Thomas Massie, who actually have supported the president, have supported the president's agenda, somehow can get at odds. But I've known the president for over a decade, and I still have a good relationship with him. And I think over time, he'll come to appreciate Thomas Massie. And I think Thomas Massie is going to win.
For what it's worth, he seems to like you better, is what he said. I'm reading an exact quote. He says, "We call him Rand Paul Jr." He's talking about Massey. He votes against everything, but at least I like Rand a little bit. He goes on to say, "I got him elected twice. If I didn't endorse him, he was not going to get elected. At least he's okay. I wouldn't say the greatest."
Well, I return the favor. I like the president. I've known him for over a decade. I've played golf with him many times. He's enjoyable to be around. He's funny, has a sense of humor, and some of this is performance. When he gets on stage, he's performing for the crowd, and so I take a little bit of with grain of salt. But I've talked to the president within the last month, about meeting with foreign leaders, meeting with the president of Colombia, and had good conversations. I spoke with the president recently about trying to get what are called association health plans, where if you're an individual, you could join a consortium or a collective like Costco or Sam's Club to buy your insurance at a cheaper price. So we still communicate on a host of matters. And like I say, I enjoy being around him. So I don't think this is an irrevocable breach here. I think that there ultimately people are going to come back together on this. And really, I think it's important to have people who are, I think the debt's the most important problem that faces us. It's really more important than whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, is whether or not you're a conservative and want to do something about the debt. And I think Thomas Massie is probably the number one defender in the House of Representatives on the debt, and I'm probably the number one defender against debt in the Senate. So I don't know. A lot of voters think it is important that we have somebody up there trying to cut spending, waste, and fraud. The Somali fraud, I tried to cut $5 billion recently and lost, but at least I'm trying to get rid of some of that fraud. And I don't know. I think voters actually appreciate a certain degree of independence.
Just a couple more questions here. I wanted to touch on Iran. Some of the president's words yesterday. He said, if we won the war, which we have basically done, he says, if we had won the war, of course, he said people would say he should have done it faster. sort of referencing the fact that he can't win no matter what he does, at least based on what he was saying in his mind. He also said over the past 11 days, our military has virtually destroyed Iran. He keeps calling it a war. I just wanted to get sort of the latest from your perspective and your understanding.
I do believe we're talking about a war, and that's why Congress should have voted on it. But we've gone down the path. We're involved in this war. And I think the best we can hope for is the safety and success of our soldiers and that they return home soon, which means I think we should all be cheering for a short war, for a war that ends soon, not only for the safety and lives of our soldiers, but I think ultimately for the economy and really ultimately for political purposes. I don't think this is going to be good for the Republican Party to have high oil prices, high gas prices, and the war, lingering over our heads for several months. So I think some of the president's rhetoric in the last week or so have sounded more like he would be willing to end the war sooner rather than later, and I hope that's true.
The release of 172 million barrels, of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve really signals the fact that they understand that the price at the pump might turn some heads here and already is doing that across the country.
Yeah, and I think they're exactly right. I mean, if you follow the newspaper, like in my hometown, one of the most common letters to the editor will be about gas prices, almost always. People are very conscious of, needing to drive to work, needing to fill up, whether they can go on vacation. And when they see the gas price rise, it hurts people. It takes away from their expendable income. And so, yeah, I think they're right to worry. Releasing this from the strategic oil reserves is sort of a one-time thing. They're releasing about half of what we have left. Biden released a bunch of it when the Ukraine-Russian war started. Now with this release, they'll be down to maybe one more release about this size until it's all gone. So I don't think this is the ultimate fix. The ultimate fix is getting the war over with. And I think even our soldiers, we have a lot of soldiers in Kentucky. If you interview them, I think most of them are willing to do their duty. They're brave. They are doing their duty. Many of them are overseas, but they also wish, hope, and pray for an end to the war. And I think that's not an unreasonable thing to hope and pray for the end of the war.
Last question before I let you go. There is a bill that I'm sure you're very familiar with moving through the Kentucky State Legislature that would allow anyone in Kentucky's federal delegation to go for reelection, run for reelection, as well as potentially run for president at the same time. I can assume you're in support of that.
I am, and I think that it's good for Kentucky in the sense that when we have prominent people in the federal legislature and we want them to be part of the national debate, I think we should make it easier for them and not harder. Many states do this. Texas famously has done this for a long time, where you can be on the ballot twice. And the reason it's important is because it's very, running for president to actually win is a long shot for anybody. And you don't know though unless you get started, unless you're able to campaign. I haven't made a decision and won't make a decision until after the elections this fall, but it does cross my mind, and I'm happy that the legislature is considering this.